Is it on? Oh, there we go. Wow, that was incredible. I hope you all found the Battle of Brooklyn as powerful and thoughtful, provoking as I did. I want to thank some of our electeds that came tonight. Alexa Avilas, our councilwoman. Anthony's here from the Public Advocate's Office. Marcela Yanez from our Assemblywoman. Is there anybody else that is not in the front row from our elected officials' office? No, okay. I want now, you guys have to come over here. We're Suki and Michael. You're gonna have to come around the stage unless you're gonna hop on. But now it's my great pleasure to introduce the filmmakers behind this incredible documentary, Suki Hawley and Michael Galindo. Suki and Michael are the directors, but they also are storytellers who bring depth, urgency, and humanity to the issues they documented in this film. They chronicled this grassroots movement to the realities of gentrification, the real impact of development on communities, ensuring that stories like this one we just witnessed are not only forgotten, but can live on to inspire other communities like ours here in Red Hook, facing similar battles. Battle for Brooklyn is a testament to their commitment to truth, activism, and the power of film as a tool for social change.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for this wonderful screening, and thanks to everyone who came out. Thanks to the community who showed up, everybody, the activists. I haven't talked about this movie in 10 years, so it's like, what about that score? What about the music? What about the community that's represented in that movie? I just feel like it's a prescient situation that we all could learn from again today, that if we stick together, like, we can accomplish a lot.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. And well, I think, can you hear me? I don't know. Can you hear me? Okay, use mic. Okay. Sorry. So, yeah, one thing that we thought when we came was we really needed to share, because it really was so powerful to, like, watch her really do the right thing over and over again. Even after this, she held a press conference to point out that no jobs were given, and in fact, what they did do, the build set up, was a situation where they fixed a home in Staten Island, and they were promised union cards. They didn't get paid, and they didn't get union cards. So everything about this project was unbelievably corrupt. And I just can't help but think it was a bunch of billionaires practicing this project of promising things and saying we have to fix things, and just really taking advantage of people. And it's pretty scary to watch that and then watch the news literally today, the same story. And it does point to this idea of just how amazing this is, that all these people are here for the same reason, which is to connect with their community. And many of these people here know each other because of those connections. So the lesson is just keep connecting. And I'm gonna just make a quick connection between, we had these posters made, and we had them made by a friend of ours who makes posters for music things, and he's made posters for all our movies. But what I realized was, he made a poster for a movie we made called Radiation, and when I was walking around with Patty, she said, there's one guy who's not gonna sell out. He's the only one of the loft dwellers who's not gonna sell out. And she said, his name's Dan Goldstein. I said, oh, I know Dan. He made a poster for our movie Radiation. And then Ron actually made silk screens based on that thing. And here we are today with these posters that Ron made, and Dan sitting there having originally designed that poster. And it's just, the point is that when we make these small connections in community supporting each other, those connections just have impact for years and years and years. So keep making those impacts. Let's keep pushing back on things, and let's keep trying to make a better world. We will have some of these afterwards. They were made just to commemorate this. It's most of the people who were in the fight.
This one's working. You put it back on the chair for me. I have 2 hands. So thanks, guys. As we transition to our panel discussion, so if you're on the panel, stop making your way over to the stage, because you guys are spread out. I'm honored to introduce someone who has dedicated his life to community-driven planning and social justice, Ron Shiffman. Ron is a visionary urban planner, activist, educator whose work has shaped neighborhoods across New York City and beyond. As the co-founder of the Pratt Center for Community Development, he has spent decades advocating for equitable development, affordable housing, and policies that put people before profit. His expertise, integrity, and unwavering commitment to empowering communities makes him the perfect person to guide tonight's conversation. Ron understands that better than most that this development isn't just about land use, it's about who gets to stay, who benefits, and whose voices are heard in the process. His leadership and example has inspired countless activists, organizers, and community members to fight for a more just and inclusive city, including me, as I was lucky enough to have him as my professor at Pratt. Please join me in welcoming Ron Shiffman, who will introduce the panel.
I'm going to let everybody, as they come up, Dan and Goldstein, they're going to introduce themselves. It's a good way of moving the schedule.
Thanks everyone for coming out. I'm very glad to be able to be here tonight. My name is Daniel Goldstein. I'm a co-founder of Develop, Don't Destroy Brooklyn. I was a reluctant activist and the spokesperson for the group. And 5 years ago, my family and I moved to Berkeley, California, where we currently live. My wife is a farm girl from India, and she had enough of New York and the winters. That's one big reason for our move. But we miss Brooklyn a lot, and my daughter, who's 16 now, she texted me to say she wishes she could be here, and she loves Brooklyn, and she, like, every day talks about what are we doing in California. Thanks everyone for coming out.
You're up, Candace.
Introducing yourself.
It is. Hi, I'm Candace Carpenter, and my former role was as the head of the legal team for Develop, Don't Destroy Brooklyn. And I have to say, for those of you who aren't sure how much activism you want to engage in, the people in this room who fought with us are my family. I don't see them all the time. I don't always know what they're doing, but when we get together, there is nothing that makes me happier. These are the best people in the world, and they fought the hardest for a very good reason. And the lesson that everybody needs to take from this is, even if you don't win, you set an example and you give other people hope. And that's, I think, what the message of tonight is, and the message of Develop, Don't Destroy.
Good evening. My name is Karen Blondel. I'm the president of the Red of Houses, and I'm here to just kind of listen to. I remember that going on because I'm in my 60s, but at the same time, I'm here to learn a little bit more and maybe talk about some of the stuff that we're dealing with now in Red Hook. Thank you.
My name is Robert Puca. I'm still living at Newswalk Building. I've been living this since 2002, so I'm still adjacent to the project, and I'm still actively involved. I live there on a daily basis, and I feel the effects of this project on a daily basis. And unfortunately, this project is still going on, and unfortunately, it's about to get a lot worse if it happens the way it's going to happen right now. So, and I just want to thank this Pioneer Works, and I just saw Eric Reschke and his wife Lillian, and it was so nice to see them. And like, I just want to, what Candace said, I haven't seen Daniel in so long, and I haven't seen Lucy and Stephen and everybody. And it's, I'm looking forward to having drinks with you guys at Sunny's. I'm really looking forward to it.
I just want to say to thank you to Victoria, who we didn't know.
Sorry, I apologize.
She's an incredible organizer, and congratulations on putting this
Can you
together.
imagine if we would have had her?
We would have won, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you all, and thank you for allowing me to sort of moderate this panel. These are folks that I worked with a little bit towards the end of the fight. I have to disclose I was a board member of Develop, Don't Destroy, so to some degree I have a conflict of interest moderating this. But a lot has transpired in the period between the end of that film and today. And one of the things I wanted to discuss is, what can we really learn from Atlantic Yards that is applicable to the fight that you're going to have here in Red Hook and Carroll Gardens and, you know, with the Brooklyn Terminal Market project, both of which are large. And they engage, in many cases, some of the same actors. And I think it's really important, particularly today, because, you know, I came here, I was fuming because I watched the news at 5 o'clock. I almost missed coming here at 6 o'clock because I was screaming at the television set. And the issue is democracy. And we have to build it from the neighborhood level all the way to the national and international level. And I think the lessons here are really going to be important. So what I wanted to do to begin this discussion, because it's running a bit later than we thought, is to ask each of the people who were in the film to, since a lot has transpired, what to you is somewhat different, and what did you learn during that fight that you would recommend people be aware of today? So.
We learned a lot, obviously, and I think what I learned was you have to do everything that you can think of from every angle, you know, especially when they're bypassing the legislature, as they're doing with the marine terminal. You have to, I think the advantage we had is we weren't expected. Tish James wasn't expected, Develop Don't Destroy Brooklyn wasn't expected, Patty Hagan wasn't, I don't think they expected me. I hope you guys find that you can surprise the powers that be in what you're working on. And you do have to do the best you can to get ahead of things, which I know in Red Hook, they're pushing for approvals, I think, in a matter of a few months. Is that right? April? So I think you have to meet with every politician who is willing to meet with you. We made 2 lobbying trips up to Albany. One was like a few months after the project was announced. We took a busload of maybe 60 people up, and we met with, you know, probably half the legislature or something like that. We met with all the city council members, or as many as we could. Even though they in the city council had no say, we found a developer who outbid the developer. So I think we were lucky. We had people, including myself, who had the flexibility to basically work full-time on this, and that's very hard to do, of course. So if you have people who can do that, or even part-time, and really dedicate themselves, you're going to surprise yourselves with what you can do.
Yeah, and I would say that, one of the things that Norman Siegel said in the film was that, you know, you need to, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but you need to be painfully honest. You need to, you know, play by the rules. And we did, and we were scrupulous in our truths and our honesty, and the other side lied 24/7. Don't ever buy into that. That is the worst thing you can do. We know that by what's going on in Washington now, but it is really important to be true to yourselves, because at the end of the day, whether you win or lose, that's what you're going to be proud of. That's one. 2, we were really kind of, think about when this was, 2003, kind of at the cusp of all of the social media, right? And I think that was one of the reasons that we were able to be successful. But you have social media at your fingertips. Use it, because it magnifies your voices, and it's essential that people believe that you're even bigger than you are, right? Because there's safety in numbers, and people want to join if they think it's safe to join. But you also need to talk individually to people, because what I found, a guy named Sean Maloney was running for, I believe he was running for Attorney General back in the day, and he said Atlantic Yards was the poster child of everything is wrong with the government. And he was right. If you took 15 minutes with anybody, you could convince them that at least something was wrong with the project. You just had to hit on the right things. So you have to do the one-on-ones too. So it's a big picture, little picture thing. And the more people you can get to join and join your ranks by making them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, the more successful you will be.
Let's skip over you, Karen, for a moment.
I was expecting this question, so, you know, some of the things that we did, and I was talking to Norman about this. By the way, Norman Oda couldn't be here tonight. He's the main journalist, probably that's the only journalist left that's still covering the Atlantic Yards project, and he has a blog. He writes on it almost every day, and I encourage anyone, if you want to, you know, get the updated.
They call them Substack now.
Yeah, it's on Substack, right? So, and you know, Norman gave me some advice, and some advice I want to give everybody in Red Hook is after you get organized, you have to present an alternate plan if you can do it, because right now their plan is the only plan. We were lucky enough that Shabnam and Daniel and Candace and everyone else, they were able to find another developer. So if you can somehow come up with an alternate plan to compare the plans, I think that would be helpful. Also, right now, I think Dan Goldman is in charge of the task force, so I would agree with Candace and everything. You got to get to your elected officials, you know, whoever's on that task force, and you know, write to them, and you know, try to get meetings with them. I'm not sure who else is on the task force. Is there a lot of is there more than Dan Goldman, the politician? Okay, so any politician that's on that task force, they need to hear from you guys. They need to hear from the community, because like in our case, it's a state project, so there's no, your city council person, you're the state, okay, so even you don't have a vote on this project, do you? You don't have a vote, okay. So again, no elected officials have a vote from the community, have a vote on this project. So again, you know, organize, and you got, I hate to say this, but you got, you know, they're talking about April approving this, so you gotta get in action now.
I said a lot has transpired. I want to, before I turn it over to Karen to react, make one or two quick comments. One is there were over 6,000 units promised of housing for Atlantic Yards. To date, 3,200 have been built, of which about 1,200 are called affordable. About 65% of that is for people who are in the upper middle income brackets, and only about a third of those units are available to low or moderate or middle income, truly middle income families. So the affordability issue isn't there, has not been met. The other thing that I want to point out is that there was one developer. And whenever you get into a large scale project and there is one developer, you're always going to be held hostage by that one developer. And it's something I can tell you I've seen in every project that I've ever encountered. And I think that lesson has to be learned, that we need to do something along the waterfront. Something has to be built. But make sure that when you do it, you're not winding up with the majority of the housing where 75% or 80% of the housing units are slated for 3% of the upper 3% income of the brackets. And that's exactly what's being proposed here. So I want to turn it over to you, Karen, to just make your response to what you saw in the film, and also what questions you might have for the rest of us.
Sure. So, not only did I watch that film, I faintly remember some of the things that were going on at that time. If I was to compare that to the project now, it's different. We're not displacing anybody who's living in the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. So that's one difference in my mind. I am a task force member, and I'm representing the Red Hook West houses, along with Ms. Brown, who's representing Red Hook East. I will say to you that I'm a visionary. I definitely have other plans, and my plans are not incumbent on the BMT. What
BMT's name?
Brooklyn Marine Terminal. So I guess that's the reason why most people are here, is because we're at the onset of a very, very big project here in Red Hook that runs from Atlantic Avenue all the way to Wolcott. And that's 122 acres. It's a big piece of land. If you want to kind of compare the size, the Red Hook houses sits on 40 acres. So just comparison, it's about 3 times the size of the Red Hook houses. The geography is really very different. Even though it's a marine terminal or container terminal there is no rail like in most areas where you would have a container terminal to ship things out via railroad. What they're proposing is that we actually build a new concept called the Blue Highway. And I like that idea because we do need to get trucks and things off of the roadway, especially down here in Red Hook where we're always bottlenecked and where we have a Brooklyn cruise now and very low transportation for the residents. I will say that, number one, I'm not against development, but I do want strategic development that keeps the character of this community. This is a very unique community. It's been isolated for decades, and that created a very unique situation where we really feel hometownish to the point where I can argue with Victoria today and tomorrow meet her for pizza. That's just the way we work here. We're very passionate about this neighborhood, but I will also say that I came to Red Hook at 19 years old, and the place was already dilapidated. It was already desolate. All of the industries around me had closed. So for me to walk from my house to the train station, it was horrible. It felt very unsafe. You know, you guys may live in houses where when you go past your door, the light comes on. Well, in the project, the lights go off when I pass the street light, you know? And so just thinking about Red Hook and the, how old the buildings are, thinking about operations, nobody comes to work here. And it's not just because we had a crack epidemic in the 80s. Remember, we also were home to Al Capone, and we keep low transportation. That means that we don't have a lot of people coming and going from here. So one thing we would have to definitely solve for is transportation, not just for trucks, but for people. The other thing is, I've been envisioning a plan for the Red Hook houses for at least the last 10 years. I kind of feel like no matter how much I offer communities that are not mine, when it's about us getting into certain spaces, like when we talk about housing, there's still a big divide between Black America and white America. I don't feel like I'm welcome to move on your block. I just don't. So I'm not looking at that idea anymore. I'm looking at the idea of fixing what we already have. We are responsible and own public housing. That is ours. Why don't we start there at the Red Hook houses? That was what I told the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. We spent $550 million on the outside, which is pretty much an environmental lawsuit. And the inside is falling apart. It's a favela, it's an informal settlement, it's not right. At the same time that we've been treated like that on the inside where nobody can see what's happening, except for Thaddeus one time. Thaddeus Pulowski, I told him we had no trees. They cut out trees right before the pandemic. They were sitting in a graveyard, all the tree trunks and everything for like months. We lost 500 trees to construction. Now we're dealing with another issue with humidity in the summer, with urban heat island. So there are things that we have to solve that you may not be aware of, even though you're a part of the Red Hook community. And so I have to think, number one, for the residents first, and how do we sustain and stabilize the Red Hook houses so that those 3,500 families have some place to live. And I'll yield.
That's a great place to start. You know, I'm an old man, and the first project we ever worked on in the Pratt Center was to save Columbia Street from the port going from the port water to Hicks. We came up with an alternative plan, which is really the one that now exists. So I am revisiting this. That was 1970. 1968 that we were there. So I'm an 85-year-old character, so and so this community I've known since that period of time. And when you talk about the mobs that were there, we also encountered them early on. But the real issue, and I think I'd like to put this forward, is that when you begin to move to get the state involved in this case, the decisions are removed from the local community groups, from the civil society, from the Red Hook houses, as well as from the local council and assembly people. And I want to really emphasize the fact that this project was proposed to the task force in a way that presupposes its end solution, because it's built on a neoliberal idea that you're using housing to subsidize infrastructure. The second you do that, you raise the cost of the housing, you raise who can move into that housing, and the second you do that, you really constrain the opportunities that can take place here. We may really need some continued port facilities. We need infrastructure. It's the first time that I've seen a proposal come forward where infrastructure needs to be supported by the housing that's being built. It's an absurd beginning, because what you're doing then is foreclosing the ability to build affordable housing for families, for seniors, for the people that you're really talking about.
I just want to, DMT has presented a proposal, so they presented their best case scenario. What you need to do, or not saying you, but what I would do if I was the community, is you need to show what the worst case scenario is. Because right now their numbers are rosy, and the housing is this, and so there needs to be a competing, like I said, a worst case scenario shown to them. And I was talking about politicians before. I understand Gerald Nadler, your congressperson that represents this area, he is very much in favor of keeping an operating, working port terminal. So I would, again, I don't know what part he can play.
He doesn't represent.
He doesn't represent.
It's Dan
He's
Goldstein.
no longer representing, and Dan Goldstein does.
Oh, okay. There goes that idea.
There is a big difference here, and I think it's important to point out, and that there is a planning process that has engaged a lot of people. And there are a number of local task forces, including the one that Karen is on, and a couple of others. So there's a lot of discussion and planning. The trouble is the way it's framed. They're getting a presupposed plan, and people are talking about it. And what I'm concerned about is it may be just press release planning and not substantively listening to what's coming out of the communities. But there is a difference here. There's no eminent domain that's major. And secondly, that there is a planning process. But what it is, it's being controlled by the city's Economic Development Corporation and handed off to the state's Empire State Development Corporation, bypassing for the final decisions to bureaucrats. I hate to sound like that, but to the bureaucrats who won't listen to the public.
Yeah, no, but while you said there are some differences, the similarities is the lack of transparency, that shutting out the legislature, city or state, trying to silence people, I'm sure. And we're seeing all that same stuff with the federal government too. So I just wanted to say that, but also I want to thank Mike and Suki and David for the film, but because it's such a great tool to bring together something it could be used all the time, all over the country. And without that film, none of that happened. No one will remember any of it. So it's...
Including us.
I can't believe that happened, but no, it's so important, and you don't have a lot of films like that. And some people might say, well, why is it focused on this guy and whatever? You need to tell a story, and I think it makes it a more compelling movie than some bunch of talking heads. So use this as a tool. Show it again in Red Hook if it will bring people together to have these discussions. So I want to thank them so much for that.
I'm glad you're doing that.
Well, I also want to say that if you really stopped and think about what you saw, Mike carried this camera around that was the size of 3 people's heads on his shoulder for 8 years. And literally, he was there from the beginning, and every picture you saw, at every place you saw, including 7 o'clock in the morning, while Daniel was waiting for those decisions to come in, Mike had gotten there to do that. And then, when they went to make this film, think about the hundreds of hours of film that they had to wade through to make this film. So I'm sure you already appreciated it, but it is actually just an incredible, incredible documentary because of the span of time and the focus that Mike and Suki had when they put together this film.
Okay. I think it's important at this point to see if anybody in the audience has a question or a comment that they would like to make.
If you guys want any questions, there's a
Because you've
line
been
here,
talked at.
and you can get online to ask a question.
Can I go first?
And-
Go first.
And Victoria, how much time do we
We have
have?
about 35 minutes, so we're
Okay.
doing good. We're doing good.
Okay.
I hope I'm starting a trend. I'm Steve Etlinger. I was involved with these folks.
Yes, you were.
I did my best. I'd like to suggest something to learn from what we did was, after the fact, a bunch of us worked on quality of life issues and kept the powers that be, they kept their feet to the fire. We attended a lot of meetings of the state advisory board that was founded. We had small victories on quality of life issues like truck routes, signage for trucks, and so forth. And I think we might have reduced the impact on the community, but it took going to those meetings, and we had a minor organization that kept on after the project started. Thank you. Just some advice.
I just wanted to, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment about quality of life issues because, like I said, I'm still there. I'm one of the lone voices that are basically, keeping an eye on the project. And I wanted to make one point, after this film, there was a lot of people in there, jobs, housing, hoops, and everyone was looking for this project to change their lives, like the BMT is supposed to change people's lives. And the only victors in this project were a Russian billionaire who made money on it, and who does he sold the project to a Chinese billionaire who also made money, and the Chinese billionaire sold a portion of the project to the Koch family. So to more billionaires. So just be aware of when you think they have your best interests in mind, just everything should be taken with a grain of salt. I wouldn't believe a thing anybody says. They promise, and if you look at the screen, all the promises that were made with this project, Atlantic Yards, and what has actually been kept after 20 years, it's a joke. And like I said before, it's going to get, at least where I'm at, I wish you guys the best luck, but Atlantic Yards, the project, it's still going on. And it's, like I said, I don't want to get too much detail, but that project is going to get worse if it goes through as planned.
Yeah. I had the fortune of being appointed by the borough president of Brooklyn to the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation, which is supposed to oversee the development plan. And I must tell you, working with the Empire State Development Corporation has been one of the worst experiences of my life. We find out information when Norm Oder files a Freedom of Information Act. So we now know that they're planning to change the development that's going to take place on the old Model site. We found that out from Norm, not from the meetings that we've had at Atlantic Yards. We find out a whole series of other things because the press is acting as a watchdog. It's important that you develop the mechanisms, the alliances with the press and others that would keep what you're doing accountable.
And I don't want to hog it, but that what you just said was so important. When this was going on, how I started my day, I was working on Wall Street at the time, so I would get to the office by like 6:30, 6:45. I had read all the papers at that time, and the first thing I did was I would call Lumi, who had our website, nolandgrab.org, and I would go through all the papers and I would tell her what articles to print, and next thing I know, it would be on by 7 o'clock, it would be on nolandgrab.org. So the press, unfortunately, there is no local press anymore. I mean, I'm not sure who's reporting on the BMT project. I haven't seen, you know, if I didn't hear about this, I wouldn't know anything about it.
Let's go to the next one.
You just reminded me how important it is to foil freedom of information. Every, you know, who's behind this, who are the developers they have in mind. I'm sure you could get some help here on who would be helpful to foil.
This is Lucy Coteen. She was on the steering committee of Develop Don't Destroy Brooklyn.
Thank you. Now you made me forget what else I was going to say. So, EIS, is there any environmental impact statement? Because what comes to mind is they want to put all this housing in a waterfront. I mean,
So I didn't come here personally to be grilled.
No,
I'm just letting you know, hold on. I didn't come here for that. I just came to look at the film and to make whatever comment I feel, but I don't disclose how I'm going to vote, why I'm voting, because I don't really owe it to anybody in this room. I owe it to the public housing residents that I represent. I came here because I know Ron a long time and he asked me to come. But I don't want anybody acting like I'm the focus of the attack, because I'm not. And that's not gonna, I'm just saying, because I'm feeling that. I'm just saying, I'm gonna set the record straight before we go any further. Do not talk to me like you need to school me. I think I went to Harvard, and I also won the David Prize because I can think for myself. I don't need you guys thinking for me. Let me just make that clear. Because at the end of the day, we don't get anything from you guys either. Nothing. What I did say was that I am savvy enough to not only speak for my community, but for you. The other way around, it doesn't work. You don't speak for us. We get nothing at the end of the day. Y'all walk away, and we're still in the same condition 40 years later. So let's correct that little part first, or I'm gonna just leave, because I'm not here to be grilled about my community and my stance on this project.
I don't believe I was doing that. I was just struck by the fact that this is a waterfront development, and I'm curious about some of the things that have and have not happened. I'm not that familiar with the project, what the details of it are, and
Most of it is online, so they do have an online,
Yeah, right.
where you can actually,
Yeah.
the recorded advisory group meetings, as well as the task force meetings are there. Nobody had to tell me to go to an advisory group meeting. I don't get paid to do this. I do this for the community, not just the Red Hook houses, but for people on Resilient Red Hook, for people like the Red Hook Arts Project, for Nico and them. But nobody is gonna make me their leader or their target. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think that's the intention, but let's go on to the
Okay,
next.
just the other thing I was thinking, watching this again and being reminded of what, it's so hard to remember all the things that happened, but listening to especially Rob Puca, who's right there on the front line, something like promises made, promises not kept, the lies. I was just reminded of all the lies that were told and how great it would be to have some kind of whole, you know.
Yeah, they are.
roster
The one
that-
on the wall?
There's a list on this.
Oh, sorry. Oh, it's hard to, okay, thank you.
Norman made it.
Norman made it for us.
Norman made it.
We should be grilling out politicians, because once again, if I look back, and I'm 60, if I look back,
You're a
we've had
kid.
the same party here for quite some time. And so it doesn't matter if the actual candidate changed, if the party has an agenda. And I am still a Democrat, but I'm not a stupid Democrat. And I'm not calling anybody stupid in here, but let's call it what it is. We can't be smiling in people's faces and you don't know how they vote and when they vote behind your back either. I'm not the one voting for y'all. I'm voting for the Red Hook houses, one vote. But you have your politicians here, and I'm not trying to put the spotlight on them, because I'm not talking about Alexa or Marcella, but I'm talking about years and years and years of politicians sitting around and this going on. Right now, even with the BMT, if you're trying to use a model that you use for schools that was based off the pre-pandemic numbers of people going to schools, I think you need to change your model. because they're not going to school anymore. So you don't need to build all of these schools. And then if you want to build a school, are you going to be equitable and let the kids from the houses go to those schools? That's what I'm worried about, because outside of that, we can teach ourselves. I don't need Harvard to know engineering. I don't need Harvard to know what it feels like to be in an urban heat island. I got that already right here.
Let's go to the next question.
Michael White, noticing New York, Citizens Defending Libraries, WBAI. So the Atlantic Yards project was this huge, mega-owned, top-down conceived privatization of the public realm with privatization of the streets, etc., and involving transfers of wealth away from the community upwards. And that was facilitated, I wonder if we can talk about, by a privatization of the narrative in many, many ways. So that happened from with AstroTurf, which we see with the Ratner financing, buying the silence of people, and also co-opting. So for instance, the Municipal Art Society early on was on the side of the community largely, and a great assist. But I sat with one of the trustees, one of the board members of the Municipal Art Society, when he announced to me that they were going to take over the board and turn it around and turn around its position on Atlantic Yards. So that was another privatization of the narrative. And the press, huge privatization. Rupert Murdoch bought up all the local papers during the time that this was happening, then spat them out, chewed it. So I wonder if we can talk about fighting these transfers of wealth and these top-down conceived, only we know how to do things, by deprivatizing the narrative and supplying our own narrative.
You raised that at a point in time that our federal government is becoming a subsidiary of billionaires. So we have to be very careful about how we redistribute wealth in this country, and we should be doing it in a different way. And it's a major point. Let's go on to the next question or comment.
I just wanted to speak off a point that Candace made. You cannot believe the people in government a lot of the time what they say. I'm speaking specifically about the rail yards, who had the rights to the rail yards. And from late 2003, early 2004, the MTA 3 different times said that Ratner already had the rights. And I wrote a letter to the comptroller and said, how do you get them? We never heard that there was any public thing about this. I never got an answer, of course, but I told this to the Brooklyn papers because they had printed that he had the right to build, and the editor was furious. I mean, he really raked them over. The other thing I would like to
I don't
say,
think we want to relitigate the
just question these people and go into it. And the other thing is, look up the biographies of who's in power. We looked up, we looked up where Pataki, the governor, went to law school at Columbia University, class of 1970, and it turns out he was a law school friend and pal of Bruce Ratner. There you have
That's
it.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, look at the background.
How could I beat that?
That's right. Okay.
You can beat anything.
Are there any Red Hook residents or Carroll Gardens residents who have a question or a comment? Come on up.
Hi, everybody. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a bit of a Eeyore when it comes to public. Yeah. Has anybody compiled a list of all of the promises from all these corporations, besides that, because got nothing going over in Hudson Yards. I think they're talking about another expansion of the Hudson Yards. Obviously, the EDC is not to be trusted, and any of these government organizations cannot be trusted. What they do, this is how I view it, is they let the people speak. Sorry about that. They let the people speak. They let them out of their cage. They speak. They put them back in their cage, and they go on their merry business and make the decision that most of us suspect is going to come regardless of what's going on. Now, the way I look at it is they promised, from what I guess, all kinds of stuff over at Hudson Yards. Right over here, about 800 feet from us, a whole bunch of people, whole bunch of companies that were working over here in the port, right here in the basin, lost their jobs for the expansion for the ferry system maintenance facility. That was 2 years ago. Nothing has been done other than the piles have been driven to support the boats, the ferry boats, but apparently they were put in the wrong positions anyway, from what I understand. So, do we have a list of everything that these corporations promise the community versus 25 years or more of what the reality of?
Well, in the case of Atlantic Yards, as it has been pointed out, Norm Oder and his now are keeping us informed about that. And I think somehow one of the important things for the Brooklyn Army Terminal, the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, the Army Terminal went a different way, and it was a better job by EDC. But what we need to do here is to develop some means of accountability and exposure so that the people in the community and the task forces and others can really be properly informed. And I think that's a challenge. But there's a long line, so let's go on to the next person.
While she comes up, I will just say that the biggest lie they tell is that they will hold the developers' feet to the fire and make them follow their promises. And that never, ever happens.
That's our job.
And if I
You have to develop the local capacity to hold them accountable.
Hello, thank you. I am a proud parent of a student at PS 15, which is the only fully public elementary school in the neighborhood. And I think one of the hardest things to witness in the film is like the division of the community and the way that Ratner apparently was a part of that. And it's something I actually see in the school and in the community too, with like, it's like we have a division, we do have a division of Red Hook too. And you know, people want to come to Red Hook because it's a beautiful arts community and they buy their $1 million homes and then send their kids outside to go to school. So I think the thing that I would love advice on is like, I guess just advice on the unification, how to like, you know, have connected voices and fight for both sides of the community in effective ways. So if you have thoughts, because like you went up and you shook the Reverend's hand and you know, it's, and on one hand like, yeah, how did you do that?
That was me.
Yeah, that was him.
It looks different.
It's hard enough fighting them, and then you're fighting each other.
Look, the divisions pre-existed Ratner. They exist here, they exist in New York City and the country, and but then they take advantage of them. And then,
right.
You know, Reverend Daughtry didn't want anything different than probably I wanted. And Darnell Canada, who was speaking early on in the film and at one of the hearings, he's shouting, he wanted what he wanted. And the community agreed on, yeah, jobs and housing, fantastic. But they take advantage of already divided or conflicted communities. And yeah, you have to meet together where the divisions are, and you're gonna agree on most things, or a lot of things, I think. This is a good story. The first meeting Norman Siegel in the film, who I wish could have been here, I don't think he's here. Patty contacted me and said, she got Norman Siegel to come out and meet with us, and Patty and I met with him in the back room at Freddy's, and with Eric Adams. Because Norman and
Eric Adams used to be a good guy.
Norman and Eric were very close and friends, and he was in was 100 Men. What's the organization
100
called?
Black Men in law enforcement.
In law enforcement, and Norman came with him, saying, "Look, they're going to create a racial divide or widen a racial divide, and you need to get out in front of that." And it was great to meet with Eric Adams, and he spoke. I'm quite sure he spoke at our first rally.
He did, absolutely, and he was great.
And
He was very supportive.
Yeah, and things have changed, but the point is, we knew from early on that was going to be an issue, and they would worsen that issue, exacerbate that issue. And but I think we had a lot of meetings with that area's black clergy. You see them in the film, and we were all on the same side. And I just think, and poor Marie Louis, who's deceased. She wanted legitimate things, but they were duping the community.
They drank the Kool-Aid.
Well, you could say duping the community, but let's dial it back for 1 second. The community like Ingersoll, I remember what happened to them. They were treated so bad over there. Though there was the first Rat Pack conversions happened over there in Fort Greene. Those people got displaced. A lot of times public housing has double-digit unemployment numbers. So I have to look at those fathers and those families and those ghost populations that we have in public housing. On the books, it's 6,000. In real life, it's 10,000 people living there. They're being supported off the back of mothers like me because they have no place to go. And that goes back to the crime bill of 1990, whatever it was, where they were kicking these kids out for smoking a joint. That's not fair. We have to dial back some of that and really get to the root of the problem. And I'll bring up an example for you, Amazon. We talk about trucks. I get it. We don't want the trucks here. But then I had to say to my community members, I said to them, but when it comes to the private vehicles, give them a break. Because this is the first time I saw residents in public housing who could lift their heads up coming out the door because they have a paycheck to bring back to their family. And that's what it's about. Men want to feel like they can make a living. We have diminished public housing men to food stamps, welfare, and alcoholism, and it's not right. We have to uplift the men in the community again because we're the ones who put in the crime bill and brought the crack through Noriega contraband into Red Hook in the 80s. So I'm gonna fight for Red Hook. And that's how we have to get out of this hole. We have to give people what they want so they want what we have to give. They can't learn this stuff if they're still worried about food, shelter, and love.
Can I answer her question? Can I try and answer her question? So I would say that if there are, and obviously there are divides, if you can somehow bring people together at a meeting and, and air some things out and come to some critical points that you guys agree on and just try and move forward on those points. Because like Daniel said, not everyone's gonna agree on everything and, every people are gonna have different point of views, but you just try and find the most common views you can get together and work on those specific points, and everything you don't agree on, you can work on those things.
And I actually think that Tish was instrumental in bringing black clergy into our fold, because in the beginning, it was a huge divide, and once there were 7 or 8 churches that started realizing that they were being lied to. The pastors, Tish would speak to them, she got her pastor first, but I think because then there's somebody other than outsiders saying, don't trust them. Because us saying it as outsiders, that's not even trustworthy because we haven't earned the trust, right? But pastors in a church, already have trust. And so that was really, I think, huge for us to start crossing that difficult divide.
I want to go to the next question, but
Thank
my
you.
one comment on that is to always, trust and allow people to speak for themselves.
Exactly.
If you start trying to select people, then you're really in trouble.
How you guys doing? My name is Waffle. I'm also from Red Hook. She kind of asked my question a little bit, but I just wanted to know, like, what are some ways that the community can stay informed or inform others, and what are some ways that we could, like, get ahead of projects like these from happening, or like, like.
I think we need to do some more workshops. I mean, they have them, but they don't do them right here. They want you to go up to Sunset, they want you to go to Fifth Avenue Committee. We need to be doing, what is zoning? What is the area medium income? What is the difference, which was one of the first questions I asked the task force. What's the difference between URLUP and GPP? And no, they did actually answer it. And that's what brought me on GPP, is because once you finish URLUP, you're stuck with it. GPP had more flexibility. So what we were trying to attempt was to get them to take a smaller part of the Brooklyn Marine Terminal and start your GPP with that as we try to work out the other parts, like the housing issues or whatever.
On the GPP, let me tell you from experience now monitoring, the state alters it on their own without talking to anybody. So at least ULURP requires that you go back to local elected officials. Elected officials don't approve a GPP, only the board of directors of the Empire State Development Corporation do. So we have to, what you're suggesting is really important. We have to learn about all of these minutiae and things and make sure we're sharing what we're learning with everyone.
Because who appoints the ESD, the United States Development?
The governor.
The governor.
And it's by appointment.
The point.
So and just talk about the ESDC for, and I'm going to answer your question also. Just talk about the ESDC. I go to these, Ron is a member of the AYCDC committee, which was a committee that was it was formed to supposedly oversee, if I'm describing it wrong, let me know, oversee the project and issues with the project. And basically the way the ESDC board treats this project is that they're basically, whatever the developer says and whatever the developer wants, they kind of do. They treat it like almost like they have a contract with the developer. And I go to these meetings and when it comes time for public comment, I say my 2 bits. I know they're not listening to me, but I say my 2 bits anyhow. They get pissed off at me. But like Ron says, the state could take whatever I say with a grain of salt. And first of all, by the way, I want to apologize if I came off as any.
No, I'm a little aggressive.
I love no. Listen. I can go Brooklyn. I can go Brooklyn on you if I wanted to. So don't worry, I won't. Okay. So, but my point being is just the way we're talking now. You just gotta, if there's divisions, you gotta find those divisions. I mean, I don't know if there's groups. I know there's different groups formed around the BMT project. Is that correct?
There are.
Yes, there are.
They're starting to unite.
Okay, so
That's
those,
great.
so those, like this gentleman said, I don't know who he is, but those groups need to unite, and again, speak, if you can, speak as one voice, alternate plan. You can't just say, if you have a problem with the plan is bad, BMT, whatever this company, whatever they're bad. You gotta
go on.
Thank you, Ron, for cutting me off.
Thank you, Waffle.
Hi. Great question, Waffle.
Thanks for this. I'll make it quick. There's a lot of varying amounts of information what everyone knows, but Red Hook has a Facebook group. So if you guys live in Red Hook, get on the Facebook group. I went to the community board meeting, which has a voting, I think, member on the task force. So go to the community board, CB6 meeting, but let's see. There's no other plans, like housing plans out there. There's one plan out for the BMT project, and I know from my neighborhood neighbors that number was just announced in December, and then that number has gone up a lot since December, and then I think they're supposed to vote on it in April. So the timeline's very fast and very short. So just seeing how you guys were able to find an alternative bidder that bid way over the amount. I guess I'm curious, and all the various groups are starting to kind of organize and get in touch with each other, and really proud of like Red Hook for organizing a great meeting in January where everyone was able to come together and learn more, but definitely more of those would be great. But how did you guys like find that other developer? How did you guys organize to like, I guess I'm curious, like how did you guys get a group together and who knew what to do, what and when, and like, I don't know, do we have time to do that before April?
We have
because
6 weeks.
Well, two things.
Yeah.
They weren't going to put those rail
I'll take
yards
my
up.
answer off the air.
They weren't going to put those up for bid. It was because the proposed football stadium failed, and they felt the pressure to do some semi-legitimate process. So once they put it up, there was something like 45 days to respond to that RFP, which was a little ad in the Times, I think. So my wife, I think she put together we put together a package and we sent it out to, I think, 60 developers or more, including some distant cousin in India who was a big developer there. Extel was the developer who responded. We met with them. You know, we didn't do what.
One of the jokes was, of course, that it was 6 weeks, and one of the things that they said at the MTA meeting is, oh, but Ratner's plan is more fully developed than Extel's is. Right, because Ratner had been doing it for 3 years and you didn't let anybody else participate. So of course it's not going to be fully fleshed out, but it was enough to cause people pause, and they came in at such a different number that we got press on it, right? Because this was a big deal because it was developers. So but that's one of the alternate plans. We also had a community member who was an architect Marshall Brown created an alternate for us. But long before Extel, and they used that to create their plan, because Marshall, who was he?
Through workshops.
Through workshops with the community, created what they wanted. And so he did it, it took him a little longer than 2 months, but he had a plan. And so somebody else could do that. It's not impossible.
The second plan was a bit different than the first.
Right.
It involved breaking up the site into 6 different development sites so there could be different developers coming in. We worked with them.
I forgot about that.
And because if you have different developers, each taking a part of the site, then it moves concurrently or it moves quickly, and no one person can hold you up. And in this case, there is no developer now. It's the state and the city trying to develop a plan in which they will then try to bring in one developer, but I would suggest that you never allow that you break it up so that there are different development sites. It's a completely different phase kind of operation in this case. Here, it's building up the capacity of the various different task force, begin to plan it better, and to build up the community so it has a civil society and the community organizations that hold it accountable, not only during the planning phase, but during the bidding phase and during the construction phase and the occupancy.
But you suspect they'll want one developer? You suspect they will try to use one
I
developer?
suspect the way they're doing it.
But
they'll do it.
Ron, why don't you guys develop a plan to attack the EDC model, their model? The fact that they keep putting appointees in, there gotta be a way where we could put a linchpin in those people that even if you leave, you owe back something from your salary or something if you fail the community. You gotta look at this in a different way so that they don't want those cushy jobs.
Right.
Like, come on, you know? We keep on talking about the developer, let's talk about the government.
Yeah.
Right, let's talk about these agencies. Because we get the same thing with public housing. The same thing goes on. 30, 40 years I'm paying my rent, which is 2 mortgages. But I still got the same asbestos, the same infrastructure problem. And now you want to walk away and give it to a private developer. When do we hold these people accountable? It's the same thing with the BMT. Port Authority was there. You were supposed to maintain that area. Now we got to foot that bill. Why is the government not responsible to the people of this community for that?
Karen, terrific. I think it's a great point, almost to end. Your last comment.
Okay, super quickly, it hurts my heart to hear that 500 trees were just taken up. It reminds me of East River Park, which was destroyed, and that process was completely fugazi, and you know, the most chilling, and years ago when I first saw this film, the most chilling line is Bloomberg at the groundbreaking, where he says, it's not gonna matter years later how long it took, it's just that this is gonna happen.
That it didn't get done.
You know, the capitalists, like they are the facts on the ground, right? So in, you know, hopefully maybe, I don't know, scoping out, changing the facts on the ground, we're starting to. Tomorrow, most of the people in this room might know, but Indivisible is a co-organizer of a Trump-Musk protest at Tesla tomorrow in Gowanus, 126 9th Street, no kings in Kings County. And thank you very much. I appreciate all your work.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the filmmakers. I'm going to thank all the panelists.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. He's the best.
Oh yeah, group photo. We're doing a group photo, guys. Stand up. Ron, you got to stand up. We're doing a group photo. But please don't leave. I'm going to talk while you're taking this photo so I don't lose people's attention. Because all the community members that asked about organizing, we are organizing. We are creating another vision with Pratt and some people at Brazilian Red Hook. So please stay involved. Let me take a picture. You get it?
No,
Oh,
no, no,
anybody?
wait, one more second. One more second. Keep smiling. All right. All right.
If anybody's leaving and doesn't want to hear the rest of the things I'm saying, we are going to Sunny's afterwards to continue the conversation, so because these are important conversations we need to have. And I am the chair of Resilient Red Hook, Victoria Alexander, and we came together after her Superstorm Sandy. And one of the biggest fights we're engaged in right now is about the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, and it's not just a Red Hook issue. This terminal will have lasting remaining working waterfront in New York City, and what happens here will have lasting impacts on all of New York's economy. And the environment and our ability to create a more resilient, forward-thinking New York. The city is considering that will dramatically change the face of the city and New York City. I'm trying to get through it so we can all go home. More than ever, we need ordinary people to step up and be activists. We call out injustice and hold those in power accountable and fight for a city that serves its people and not just developers and special interests. And we need voices willing to take tough questions, to challenge policies and put profit over people and demand a rightful seat at the table when decisions about our community and the future of our city are at stake. History has shown us that real challenges come from the ground up, and at this moment is no different. In the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, is the only thing that has. As committed citizens, we must push for thoughtful, in-depth planning process. And I'm asking you to sign our petition that we have started around asking for more time and more planners. I'm asking you to make a donation to Resilient Red Hook, and I'm asking you to get involved with the efforts that we are doing. We are creating a different narrative and a different story. So please reach out. I'm going to email you, so I'll be reaching out to you. And I want to thank Pioneer Works again and all of the panelists.